Is this reserved?
No, she did, but I was just like, oh. Like it was just awkward. Maybe also called. And I just.
All right, if you would please take your seats. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Claire Booth Luce Center for Conservative Women, where we empower young women to live happier, freer lives and contribute to a stronger, freer America. My name is Kimberly Begg. I am the president of the Luce Center. I am also an alumna of our programs, which is something I have in common with many of the young women in the audience today. We are delighted to have our summer interns with us today. We have been keeping them very busy this summer. Just this week alone, This fine group of young women participated in seminars here at the Luce Center on constitutional law, etiquette, and media training. Earlier this summer, they also participated in seminars on journalism and career preparedness, and they joined more than 80 young women from across the country at our Washington, D.C. summit, where they heard from some of our country's most important women leaders, including Allie Beth Stuckey, Paula Scanlon, Catherine Pekalik, and Alexandra DeSanctis-Mar. They also attended our June Conservative Women's Network event with Emma Waters, which was covered right here live on C-SPAN. Now, for those of you who are new to our CWN events, welcome. We hope that you will be a part of future events. Once a month, we are delighted to open our doors to women of all ages, and some men too. My husband is here today, to give them the opportunity to hear from top conservative women leaders discussing important cultural and public policy topics. These events provide conservative women with much needed opportunities for support, camaraderie, and friendship. Which brings us to today's CWN event. To start our program, I would like to ask one of our star interns to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all please stand, I would like to welcome Riley Swedberg to the podium. Riley is a rising junior at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix. Riley?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Riley. And now it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Amber Smith. Amber is a former U.S. Army helicopter pilot and air mission commander. She flew combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan and later served as Deputy Assistant to the Secretary of Defense. A highly sought-after lecturer, speaker, and commentator on military affairs, Amber is a frequent guest on radio and television and has written for Forbes, The Washington Examiner, The Daily Caller, The Federalist, and other publications. She is the best-selling author of 2 books, Danger Close and Unfit to Fight, How Woke Policies Are Destroying Our Military, which is the topic of her remarks today. Please join me in welcoming Amber Smith.
Thank you, Kimberly. It is so great to be here with all of you today. I'm a big fan of the organization and your mission, and actually this is my second time speaking, so thank you for having me back to discuss my new book, Unfit to Fight: How Woke Policies Are Destroying Our Military. And my book is for anyone who values freedom, who values our way of life, who is concerned about the future of the country and preserving the life that we have all gotten to live and ensuring that that continues for future generations, as well as the reality of what happens if we don't address the current state of our military and its leadership. I wrote this book because I have a deep admiration and respect for those who wear the uniform, for those who are serving our country. I want nothing more than our military to right the wrongs, to right the ship, and to get back on track to turning the military back into a mission-centric organization and meritocracy. Our nation is at a dangerous crossroads right now. Our military, it's the backbone of our nation, of our society. It's what allows us to sleep safely in our beds at night. It deters our enemies. It provides overwatch, so we all get to live our lives comfortably here in America and allow our children to grow up as free Americans. Sadly, today, our military, led by Pentagon political leadership, is in a downward spiral. The rapid decline that we have witnessed is unprecedented. The once kill your enemies machine that was a focused meritocracy has quickly evolved into an indoctrination institution that is more focused on pronouns and identity politics than it is on accomplishing the mission. You may have heard people say that the military is a reflection of society and that notion makes us stronger. But that could not be farther from the truth. The military should not be a reflection of society, nor should it be a requirement. It should be made up of young men and women who want to sign up with a patriotic purpose of destroying our enemies to win wars and protect our way of life. The best people should fill those positions. That's it. Without a strong, focused, capable, and trustworthy mission, we do not have a nation. It is as simple as that. And that right there is what led me to pursue writing my book, Unfit to Fight. I had the privilege of serving as an OH-58 Delta Kiowa Warrior helicopter pilot for over 7.5 years in the U.S. Army in the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Screaming Eagles, where I served for 2 of those years in the Middle East, a year in Iraq and a year in Afghanistan, where I flew low-level combat missions. And what makes our mission unique is that we do fly extremely low level, and we fly in direct support of ground forces. So the infantry, Marines, special forces, in-country forces like the Iraq or Afghan military, and then NATO forces as well. We provide close air support, we provide close combat attacks, we take out enemy targets. I've had the enemy try to kill me more times than I can count. I had an AK-47 round stop about 12 inches behind my back on a night mission in Iraq. I am very proud of my service. I did not join the military for political reasons. I joined because our nation was violently attacked on 9/11, and thousands of innocent, unsuspecting Americans were killed in a brutal fashion. And watching the towers fall on 9/11 not only lit a fire inside of me to want to do something, but it made me sort of focus my efforts on serving and where I felt like I best could do that and help protect the nation that I love. So I'm forever grateful to be a part of the brotherhood and sisterhood of those who served. Um, and then what is sort of interesting is after 9/11, seeing the nation unify and put aside our individual differences and come together for the good of the country. It's something that we haven't seen in some time. For example, the authorized use of military force, the AUMF, the war authorization for the Afghanistan war had one dissenting vote in Congress. One. That is like something that you could not even imagine today in today's political climate. Sadly, today, a world war is more of a realistic threat than ever. It looms daily. China continues to threaten to invade Taiwan. US and Russia tensions continue to increase over Ukraine. The escalation continues. We see threats from Iran, from North Korea. US foreign policy is in a free fall around the world. Our national debt is skyrocketing. But these threats are not only from nation states. Despite 20 years in the Middle East, despite trillions of dollars, terror groups remain a very significant and very real threat. Our open southern border has allowed countless terrorists into our nation, just waiting for the right time to attack. And the threat of these hot wars from both Russia and China is very real. And the realities of these wars would have dire consequences. The challenges our military would face and leadership would face is something that we have not seen before. The past 20 years of conflict in the Middle East has given many leaders, and not just military leaders, an inflated ego and a false sense of security when it comes to our capabilities. So, with all of these threats happening around the world, one would likely assume that the military and its leadership is focused on nothing more than preparing, training, readiness, and effectiveness of our fighting force. Wrong. Wokeism has infiltrated the military and it has become a focal point. The military is currently focused on activities that are weakening it from the inside out. Woke is a progressive liberal ideology aimed at destroying traditional norms in every aspect of our society and nation. But the military, for some, was somewhat unassuming. It flew under the radar in terms of the vast changes that it was rapidly undergoing. Most people didn't assume that the military of all institutions was at risk for becoming woke compared to other vulnerable institutions like the public education system. After all, the military frequently recruits from red conservative states. They think of most people who serve in the military as very patriotic. But the military was not an exception. Diversity, equity, inclusion, transgender policies, lowered standards, gender quotas, vaccine mandates, critical race theory, woke policies, failed leadership, and zero leadership accountability are killing morale at every level. It's contributed to the worst recruitment crisis since the end of the Vietnam War. A retention crisis is ongoing, and the all-volunteer force is at the edge of collapse. The only way an all-volunteer force works is if enough people want to volunteer to serve, and we do not have that anymore. Young Americans are paying attention. They are seeing the problems that exist in the military today, and they are saying no to serving. More and more service members that are currently serving are not staying in. They are not staying to make a career out of that. Instead, they are getting out as soon as their contract is up. Because of these divisive policies, there has been a significant breach of trust. Young service members trust their leaders. It's almost a blind trust that they follow those who lead them. They count on them, they rely on them to make the best decisions for them in combat, and they believe in their leaders. That trust is absolutely vital to the commander-subordinate relationship, and it is absolutely essential to winning battles in combat. When that relationship is taken for granted, like it currently is, that trust starts to dissipate, and that effectiveness breaks down. Men and women aren't going to fight for a leader that they despise or that they know they are merely a number to. That broken trust begins at the individual leader level, but it expands to the entire institution when a soldier sees the reality of the woke politically Department of Defense when it pulls back the curtain and gets to take a look. That vital trust has been severed, from COVID vaccine mandates to the Afghanistan withdrawal to forced DEI indoctrination. Americans are saying no to serving, and it's reflected in recent recruitment numbers. In 2022, the Army missed its recruitment goal by 25%. In 2023, the Army missed its goal by 10,000 recruits. The Navy, 7,000 recruits. The Air Force, 3,000 recruits. In 2023, in the annual defense survey by the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute, found that only 51% of Americans would recommend to their family and friends to serve in the military. That is drastically down from 2018, when the same annual survey found that 70% of Americans would recommend service. Half of those surveys pointed to the so-called woke practices undermining military effectiveness as the issue. Trust and confidence are rapidly eroding in the active duty military as well. And it is directly related to these woke policies. In 2022, a Heritage Foundation poll found that, or asked, to what degree have the following events decreased your trust in the military? 71% said the withdrawal from Afghanistan. 64% said the fact that the military is pursuing all electric vehicles. 65% said that it was the military being required to pay for travel for service members' abortions. 69% said CRT being on the Chief of Naval Operations reading list. 70% said it was the reduction of physical fitness standards to even the playing field. 70% said it was focusing on climate change as a national security threat. And the top reason for service members losing their trust in the military at 80% was allowing unrestricted service to transgenders. But you'll never hear this truth from Pentagon brass. Instead, you'll hear excuses. You'll see them point to the fact that 77% of Americans are ineligible to serve. They'll point to the fact that only 23% of The population aged 17 to 24 are eligible to serve in the military due to obesity, drug use, physical and mental issues that disqualify people. This is true, but it is also not new. It has been this way for decades. What is new is that young Americans are suddenly saying no to military service. We live in an era of instant visual communication. Because of social media, people are able to see and learn about the military firsthand from people they follow and the videos that are being posted. That's where a lot of young people are getting their information from and basing a lot of their decisions from. They see toxic military leadership, they see horrible and unhealthy living conditions, and leadership that is no longer focused on protecting the force or accomplishing the mission or winning wars, but instead is more concerned with appeasing woke politicians in DC who have their next election to win. The military is no longer in control of the narrative because of the social media era that we live in. Additionally, Pentagon recruitment has lost veterans as one of its tried and true methods of recruitment. For decades, the military relied on the fact that military service had almost become a family business. If someone in your close immediate family, your parents, your grandparents, had served, you were much more likely to serve yourself. But that is no longer the case. In a 2023 RAND report, found that 54% of veterans would not recommend military service, especially for the enlisted ranks. When I was interviewing veterans, recent retirees, and people still serving for my book, Unfit to Fight, I closed each interview with the same question. Would you recommend military service to your kids right now? Not a single individual said they would. Everyone said no almost immediately. That has and will continue to provide devastating results for military recruitment. But you can't expect the military and Pentagon leadership to fix a problem that they refuse to acknowledge exists, as well as its effects on the force. The Secretary of the Army has said that she doesn't know what woke means. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has said that he doesn't get what the issue with critical race theory is, and that the Department of Defense doesn't teach it anyway, which is false. Others have openly embraced it. General Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, while testifying on Capitol Hill, said that he thinks that critical race theory in military education is essential. He said he also wants to understand what white rage is. Whether it is denied or accepted, DEI, gender ideology, and social justice is taking priority over mission focus and mission readiness. All of this is a distraction from allowing those who are just there to serve their country and accomplish the mission. Service members are being told that they are the problem, that they have unconscious bias, that they are racist, sexist, and even extremists. The military has kicked out thousands of battle-trained, proven combat veterans with years of priceless experience over their refusal to take the COVID vaccine that was mandated by Secretary Austin and later rescinded in the 2023 NDAA. The military is spending your tax dollars on recruiting ads that appeal exclusively to the LGBTQ plus community. It's ordered stand-down days to focus on extremism within the ranks. It's lowered physical standards to ensure the retention of women. And it's even allowed drag queen shows on military bases. Our military is not a social experiment. It should not follow political agendas that change every 2 to 4 years. These woke policies are destroying the military from the inside out, and it's happening faster than anyone could believe, all while China, Russia, Iran, North Korea are watching and learning every single day what our military is capable of and what it is not capable of. They are also seeing the decline in leadership at the Pentagon, both with political leaders and generals. There has become a two-tiered justice system, among flag officers where they have a different set of rules than for those in the rank and file. The current Secretary of Defense went AWOL for a medical procedure that requires anesthesia earlier this year. He didn't tell his boss, the commander-in-chief, or give command authority to his deputy while he was incapacitated during the procedure. If a private did that, he'd be fired, face UCMJ action, and likely a criminal charge. But you saw Secretary Austin completely not take responsibility during his testimony on Capitol Hill when questioned about it, other than saying it probably wasn't a good idea. There has been no accountability, and there will be no accountability. 13 Americans were killed during the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. General Milley called a U.S. drone strike that killed 10 Afghan civilians a righteous strike, and the Pentagon held that narrative for weeks until the New York Times investigation revealed that it wasn't actually a terrorist target at all. It was an aid worker and a civilian family that included 7 children. There has been no accountability. General Milley calls his Chinese counterpart to tell him he would give him warning prior to a military strike. No accountability. We've seen generals and senior enlisted leaders get in Twitter fights with people that they disagree with. It's embarrassing, it sets a horrible example, and our adversaries are watching it all. This lack of accountability culture and decline of professional standards has eroded military culture. If you look back to World War II, generals were given months to prove themselves to be successful on the battlefield. If not, they were fired and they were replaced. It wasn't personal, but we had wars to win. Fast forward to Vietnam, you started to see a significant shift. The Pentagon started viewing firings and replacing generals as a black eye to the military as a whole, instead of as accountability for individual performance. It was viewed as negative PR and something the Pentagon wasn't interested in. Generals were not fired as often for performance, and to this day, it is incredibly rare to see a general fired for performance. You still see them get fired for personal conduct from time to time, but rarely for performance. Just look at the post 9/11 wars. The consistent testimony from wartime generals on the Hill who were in charge of combat operations consistently testified that the wars were going great, they just needed more time and more money, and continued to paint a rosy-colored picture of the war, which we all know is anything but. But general after general said the same thing. It's hurt the force as a whole, it's encouraged mediocrity, but they knew they just needed to fall in line to get promoted up the ranks rather than actually produce a successful end state. But we don't need mediocre leaders who are scared to speak out about what is right and tell the truth. We don't need leaders who are silenced into submission. We need leaders who are going to stand up for the truth and ensure that those who are serving underneath them deserve the best. Today, though, it seems that many American generals have, especially those at the very top, are focused more on scheduling book interviews to bash former presidents or schedule media appearances to increase their brand upon their retirement from the military than they are on actually solving recruitment and retention crises, the other problems that exist in the military, including the Department of Defense's inability to innovate or focus on preparing for the next war. But sadly, that yes men mentality, that groupthink is what it is being, the next generation of military leaders is being taught. By example, we need diversity of thought and leaders who can handle that, not ones who are focused on uniqueness and appeasement over the team and mission focus. We need leaders who value merit and standards and mission success. I do want to emphasize that there are good military leaders in the military. I know some, but they are the exception. And many are leaving because they have had this awakening to the current state of the military. because of everything that I mentioned. Pentagon and military leadership need to self-reflect and acknowledge what is going on if they want to reverse course. Firing of generals for lack of performance has to be the standard. Accountability is the way forward. Meritocracy is the way forward. Top military officials have got to stop looking outwards and making every excuse in the book except for the reality of the situation. DoD needs to get back to operating like a warfighting institution rather than a DC political bureaucracy. And Congress plays a very significant role in fixing this. Congress must perform their congressional duty and provide proper oversight. They own the purse strings. It's time to exert control over the matter and start using this power, including holding generals and political leaders accountable for failures. And when we saw them do this when they rescinded the COVID vaccine mandate, but it needs to continue and it needs to be more consistent. The Pentagon, this is an easy fix right here. The Pentagon can no longer be allowed to investigate itself. And if you read my book, you will learn all about this. It investigates itself and then it clears itself of all wrongdoing. This practice is an embarrassment, and the military has to get out of this business. Also, society needs to realize that wearing the U.S. military uniform is not a right or a guarantee. Not everyone is qualified or should be allowed to serve. And it is absolutely an important reminder about the military is that it is hard. It is challenging. It opens your eyes to the good, the bad, and the very ugly realities of the world. But it makes you strong, it pushes you to your limits, and it gives you confidence from dealing with extremely hard situations. And you learn that you are capable of more than you ever could have imagined. That confidence in your abilities, your decision-making, and your character lets you find out just what you are capable of, and that you will never give up on the team that you are a part of, regardless of the sacrifice or mission. That is what the military gives you: discipline, structure, and purpose. This is important in being a trusted member of a team that is required to be a part of successfully accomplishing the mission. The military is not easy, nor should it be. Becoming a kinder, gentler military is simply becoming a weaker military. A simple question that can be asked in the military context of almost anything: does this make the military stronger, more lethal fighting force capable of destroying our enemies? If the answer is no, then it doesn't need to be a burden on the military. Does lowering physical standards for women make the military stronger? No? Okay. Then we probably shouldn't do that. Does requiring taxpayers to pay for transgender service gender reassignment surgery make the military a stronger fighting force? No? Okay, we shouldn't do that. Maybe we should focus on war fighting. The danger of this crisis is hard to overstate. Without our military, we don't have a country. And part of being the greatest nation on this planet, and one that is the dominant world power, is having such a strong military that leverages its power and strength in the form of deterrence. It's what makes our adversaries think twice about unprovoked aggression. And when our adversaries are not continually worried about finding themselves the focus of the wrath of the US military, we are then in a perilous place. And that's where we are today. My hope with Unfit to Fight is to shed light on the current state of the military and the disastrous consequences if we allow this downward spiral to continue. I love the military, I love our country, and those who do as well will want to address this problem and fix it, not deny the existence of those problems and make excuses.
Thank you, Amber. So we have a few minutes for Q&A. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and we will bring the microphone around to you.
It was fascinating and depressing. Thank you for bringing this to light. I guess you told us the facts and alluded a little bit to what needs to be done. Number one, do you think it's possible? And number two, how long would it take?
I do think it's possible. I still have hope. It's going to take the right leadership. It's going to take the right, not only commander in chief, but secretary of defense. It's going to take Congress. Like I said, there's like lots of moving pieces that are all going to have to unify and work together. But like I said, you can't expect to fix a problem when some people are not acknowledging it or denying the extent of it. It is, and in terms of leadership, it is going to take military leadership at the COCOM levels and then like installation levels as well, really taking accountability for not excusing some of this. We just saw recently, like this week in the news, Fort Liberty, also known as Fort Bragg, they had an anti-terrorism brief for service members there, and they had an entire slide that was devoted to, this is an anti-terrorism brief, labeling pro-life organizations as terrorists, an entire page. So that right there is one example of how deep the culture goes. This wasn't Pentagon level, this was installation level. And that type of culture of saying, someone creating that slide and saying this is acceptable to brief to a military audience, that has got to change. So that's not the top level. It is sort of the influence is at the top, but down at the bottom, those military commanders need to be saying this is not acceptable. We're not in the business of doing this and focusing on this. And so it's going to take sort of a coordinated effort of leaders of not accepting this type of sort of activism within the military anymore. But it is the next Secretary of Defense. It is going to be a very significant challenge. And the thing with the Department of Defense is that I like to describe it, I worked in it under the previous administration. A lot of times it's like people running around like a fire alarm is going off because you have all of these very immediate threats with our adversaries. And it is very easy to kick some of these recruitment, retention, culture concerns that are damaging the military and have very long-term effects and consequences, and ability of fighting the issues that they're currently focused on. It's easy to kick that down the road and to say, well, the next group of people coming in will focus on that. I'm bogged down with China and Ukraine and all of that. So it is not going to be an easy task. I do have hope, but it's going to require some recognition and some very stern leadership to fix the problem.
Thank you so much for coming today. Do you think that with the lowered retention rates right now, it would be possible for there to be a draft in the upcoming times?
I do. I do think that a lot of people say, "Oh, technology. Do we still need the massive numbers, the in force strength numbers?" We still do. We're not there yet, technology-wise, to reduce manpower. We still need a massive army. We still need those numbers to be up where they are. The issue with a draft is, a draft is only going to ever be enacted by Congress in national emergency. And my concern is enforcing a draft right now. I think they could easily enact one. If World War III were to break out, we can't meet our numbers, we need to fill those positions. I think Congress in a heartbeat would enact a draft. I think where they would have a hard time with the way our society has gone is getting people to actually show up when their number gets called. That's what I think would be hard to enforce right now.
I read I read a book by Newt Gingrich several years ago, and I forget the name of it, but he did say that China cannot defeat us militarily, but they're going to destroy us from within. And you can see this happening, that, you know, people are just not aware of it. But I do think that it's important that at the state level, we need as many people in Congress that are going to help us to do this, because like you say, once they're in, they don't always have the answers, but they need people in Congress to help support the whole issue, because China, and the other problem is we have a codependency on business with China, especially now with President Biden. So I think the more people we get in Congress to help with this issue, so you really need to pay attention at the state level as to who you're putting in Congress.
Yes.
I'm Cassandra Alcoyne. I lived the Navy life as a mother and a spouse. And my husband was pretty high up at one point, and we had some issues there. But anyway, I just want to comment a couple of things. The woke policies, absolutely. I think there's a real effect. My son's in the Navy, by the way. But there is an issue, I think, with retention based on the readiness that we have in our forces and how much money is going to keeping our planes up
Mhm.
and our ships ready. And I think there is a problem there. And I can talk to that more in depth. I might question you though, is if you were to grade, right now we've got a chairman of the Joint Staff, Charles
Brown.
Charles Brown, right? And then we have a new CNO. And how do you grade them on the woke policy? Even if we got a new president, and would you see them being different in how they actually implement their policies that are going on right now?
Well, General Brown, he actually signed a memo in the Air Force, laying out quotas in the Air Force. So he gets a big F for woke policies. I do think there were so many issues with General Milley, and having General Brown come in to replace him. It has been somewhat quieter, and uh, I think that many at the Pentagon are happy that they're not getting as many eyes on and like media clips and hits on them the way they were with General Milley, just like constantly being out there in the public and saying controversial things and setting a very poor example for those who are serving and wearing the uniform. So I think he's no different. He's very pro all of these woke policies. Like I said, when he had signed a letter for the Air Force to ensure that these quotas, which they legally get around by calling them targets or goals instead of quotas, because quotas are technically illegal. And so they're still there. They're just being a little bit quieter. But these policies are still moving forward rapidly, which is all the more reason to pay attention to them. Sometimes when they're shouting them from the rooftops, it's easier to keep track of. But like I said, because of social media, we are able to see some of these at this sort of operator level and how it is affecting them directly. And so we're able to still see what's going on. Mhm.
Hi. So I was remembering, I read the national security statement by President Biden. I think it was in 2020. It was his white paper, I think it was, and he called the MAGA Republicans the threat to democracy within that white paper. So it just makes sense how our military is so politicized and it's very politically oriented. So I was wondering, how do we recuperate or kind of like get back to normalcy from this like kind of crazy view of what the military is supposed to be and what the threat to democracy is?
Well, In the military and basically also just as any type of leadership principle, there's a saying, like, you lead by example. And I think just the fact that the commander in chief, the secretary of defense have politicized the institution the way that they have publicly, internally, with the training that they do that I just talked about, and the culture that is being pushed at the level of, West Point cadets getting taught these CRT classes, and those are, future military leaders of our nation that are going to be leading soldiers in battle. So it is fully immersed now in military culture. The culture side is going to be extremely difficult to change. That's generational with almost any issue. If it's gone into the way people operate on a daily basis and what they think is normal, then that is going to be very hard to fix. Leadership wise, like I said, if you get the right people in, that they're able to collaborate and coordinate, saying, look, we are not a DEI focused institution anymore. We are a meritocracy. We base standards off of and selection off of standards and merit, and we will select the best people for the job, not physical characteristics. Though that itself will start to help, but they're going to see some pushback, just the way we saw when Obama allowed transgenders to openly serve in the military, and then Trump reversed it, and it was the biggest, like, the media like acted like it was the most horrific thing to ever happen, that he had reversed Obama's policy. And so they will do the same thing as soon as you say, like, hey, we're going to judge people off of merit and standards. It's something that those two words are like a very bad word to them. So it's not going to be an easy task, but meritocracy and accountability are the two words that like have to make a comeback in the Department of Defense if you want to see any serious type of reform.
Hello. I have a question about what the young generation, like millennials and Gen Z, what can we do to kind of shift the media since it's been controlled a lot by like the leftists and they write their own narrative on stuff? How can we help shine light on like the right side of the military?
I think most importantly is telling the truth and using your voice on whatever platform you use or you're able to reach people, is getting the right information out there and also refusing to be silenced. That's like such a significant tactic by those on the left, is they will just like with this issue, they will try to diminish the reality of it or say that it's not that big a deal. Or there's even in the veteran community some veterans who feel like you absolutely cannot speak out against the Department of Defense because for some reason you're being unloyal to the institution you used to work for, when in reality, if you love the military and you love our country, you will want to ensure that it's fixed so we can preserve what we all fought to defend. And so don't let them silence you. Don't listen to everything they try to say to bring you down, because it is all in an attempt to make you stop talking. So just keep telling the truth. Use whatever platform you can to let people know what's going on.
All right, let's give Amber another round of applause.
Thank you.
So we will be having a book signing with Amber in just a few minutes, and we hope that you will all join us for lunch. But first, we have a wonderful tradition here at the Lewis Center of giving our Claire Booth Lewis Center for Conservative Women mugs to our speakers. And our mugs have a wonderful quote by Claire Booth Lewis, which is our favorite here, which is, "Courage is the ladder on which all the other virtues mount." Amber, you are a very courageous woman. We are very pleased that you are here with us today. Thank you for all your work. Thank you for your books and your speaking and everything you do.
Thank you so much. My favorite color.
Wonderful. And the book signing is right outside here, as well as lunch. So we hope you'll join us. Thank you.